So I'm going to do a couple of the problems from the Chapter 10, Lesson 11 reteach, which is the one turn-in item from week 3. This can be a little bit tricky because you're asked to model the division, but once you get the hang of it, it's really nice because you get a nice idea of what it really means to divide a fraction by a whole number. So the first thing you want to do is model your fraction. I tend to always use a square. Now that square is going to represent my whole, and I'm going to divide it into 2/3. So we always divide by the number that's in the bottom. So we draw bars just to split this into thirds. And we need to shade 2/3 of it. Now what we want to do is we want to divide that 2/3 by 3 and count up how much would be in just one of those thirds. So to divide this by 3, we just make 2 lines going in the other direction. So now we've cut this 2/3 that we've shaded into 3 separate parts. We just want to look and see how many tiny squares are in each of those little parts. Well, you see there's just 1, 2 here, 1, 2 here, 1, 2 here. There's just 2 in each of those 3 parts, meaning that when you take 2/3 and you divide it by 3, you just have 2 in any one of these. So you put a 2 on the top. What do you put on the bottom? What would be the denominator for this entire fraction? Well, you want to look at how many tiny squares you've divided the entire whole up into, and you've divided it into 9. So if you take 2/3 and you divide it by 3, you have just 2/9 in any one of those thirds. So that's your answer for that one. Okay, so we're going to apply the same technique to another one of the problems. Let's go ahead and try number 6. So you have 3/8 divided by 2. So we start out first by shading or modeling what 3/8 would be. And we draw a square. I'm going to make mine a little bigger because now I need to draw and divide this up into eighths. I tend to always use a square because I'm not artistic and my lines aren't very neat, and this is just the easiest way to do it. Now notice mine kind of turned into a rectangle, no problem. But let's just make sure we have 8 different sections. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Great. We shade 3/8 of those. Now what we want to do is see what happens, or how many segments we have if we divide this 3/8 into 2. So we just cut this in half going this way. And we look at how many individual little units are shaded in either one of those 2 sections. There's just 3, right? You can see it. 3 in this one, 3 in that one. So if you take 3/8 and you divide it by 2, you're left with just 3. So that goes on the top. 3 out of what? It's 3 out of the whole. So you have to remember to count up now how many segments are in the entire whole. Well, in our case now we have 8 times 2, so there's 16 total. So if you take 3/8 and you split it in half, you have 3/16 out of the whole. So the last example I'm going to do is 9. It's 2/5 divided by 4. So again, we model 2/5 by drawing a square or rectangle, and we split it into 5 parts. And it's okay if they're not perfectly even, just imagine that they are. And you're going to shade 2 of those to start out. And then what we're going to do is we have to break that into fourths, right? So we go ahead and we draw 3 bars the other direction just to break up that 2/5 into fourths. Now in any one of those fourths, we see that we have just 2 little guys. So there's 2 in any one of those little 2/5 segments, all over how many total? There are 1, 2, 3, 4 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 20 total. So our answer would be 2/20. You could also simplify this to 1/10, though I'm not sure if you're there yet in class, and your teacher would likely just accept that because they're both the same. So that is how you would model division of a fraction by a whole number with some type of diagram.